All right, everybody, let's settle in and begin Level 2, Part 2, where we're going to be discussing full circle digital systems, with the hub of that system, of course, being a matrix switcher of the digital variety, namely HDMI connectivity. So let's review once again how to build the complete connectivity solution, the different pieces of the puzzle that are going to work together in harmony to deliver that full circle system. If your customer needs to extend video, audio, and control via cat cabling, you know that there's a balun. We label this one first here, we list this one first because it is probably the most common of needs of any key digital hardware outside of an HDMI cable. Does your customer need many source to one display or many inputs to one single output, in which case you'll require a switcher? Does your customer need one source to many displays, so the inverse of a switcher is a distribution amplifier, one source, many outputs, many displays? Does your application or your customer need many sources to many displays, many ins, many outs? Matrix switcher, again, the pinnacle of what we offer here at Key Digital and really our bread and butter. And does your customer need to convert various video and audio formats, resolutions, etc.? You're going to need a video processor, essentially, or effectively rather, known as a switcher scaler in the industry. And as a reminder, if you need HDMI cabling all the way up to 75 feet, Key Digital makes those cables to provide that extension for you if you prefer to stick with a traditional cable versus a cat balun device. So we see the full circle of connectivity here, where again you have a variety of different sources. Here we show, for example, Blu-ray player, laptop PC, set-top box, Apple TV, camcorder. We see a variety of different output types or display types, for example, projector, flat panel. Even an AV receiver is kind of a device that hovers somewhere in the middle. Sometimes it's going to be a source to the system. We at Key Digital anyhow will consider it a source. Other times it will be considered an output of the system. So everything that interconnects these pieces in delivering a scenario where, as you desire, as your application requires, perhaps in a matrix, for example, every source is able to view every display. Every display has access to every source, and any combination at any given time does not matter. That is when a matrix switcher is the hub of the system, the centerpiece of the system, the backbone, if you will. Now, all the sources plug into the hub, all of the displays plug into the hub, and this is what really enables a nice, conveniently located, remotely located equipment rack for the bulk of your source equipment and peripheral equipment, where you, again, have that nice, clean display hanging on the wall or projector hanging from the ceiling without so much as any additional furniture or wiring even in sight. Now, the advantage with Key Digital here is, as you see, we have a control processor. You feed that control processor into the Key Digital matrix switcher, and a majority of our matrix products are now able to act as an extension of your control system, not manipulating, not creating the signals in any way, but actually treating them as a matrix, if you will, where the IR or RS-232 control signal is a source, and the device to be controlled, whether it be a Blu-ray player, set-top box, projector, flat panel, etc., is the destination of that control. So it's essentially a third matrix layer, if you will, to the Key Digital part. And that's what really takes us beyond the generic, everyday matrix switcher of video and audio, because there are many options for that, but not something that packs as much punch and delivers as much value as a Key Digital matrix does. So let's jump right into 4x4 of our Hercules series. This is KD HD MS 4x4. Again, keeping the nomenclature simple, high definition, matrix switch, 4 ins, 4 outs, and that's what you get here out of this Hercules series switcher. The Hercules series switcher, KD HD MS 4x4, has the ability via the built-in RJ45 ports to send 1080p up to 140 feet away from the matrix when you integrate it with a BBTX or BBRX, or lesser resolutions, i.e. 1080i, 720p, or even 1080p at 24 frames per second, or your comparable computer resolutions up to 270 feet approximately. Now, these distances are specified with third-party Cat6 shielded cabling. It must be shielded Cat6 cabling when you integrate HDMS 4x4 with the KD BBTX or BBRX bounds. If you don't have shielded Cat6 cabling and it's not an option for you, there are of course other options that will still allow you to utilize this matrix, and we'll discuss those throughout this curriculum here. When you use Key Digital shielded Cat6 cabling, the KD Cat6 STP1X that we've introduced you to already, your distances are quite impressive and increased in some cases, again, 160% or so. This HDMS 4x4 is a video, audio, IR, and RS-232 matrix. IR and RS-232 are actually independent of each other and bidirectional, simultaneous in fact. So this goes beyond, again, HDMI video and audio only to offer a whole lot more. You have HDMI and RJ45, they're both active simultaneously on the output side. So is the RCA's there, and we're going to take a closer look at that in just a second. One of the very cool features of this product is the audio control features. We have a little icon there down at the bottom, graphic, showing you volume control, multiband EQ, and lip sync control that's actually controllable up to 600 milliseconds. We're able to control adding delay to the audio stream of the signals there. This features HDMI connections, so of course it supports your standard and high def resolutions all the way up to 1080p, 3D, even 4K by 2K. And of course it also supports PC resolutions from 640 by 480 up to 1920 by 1200, which is a comparable resolution of 1080p. Hercules series is a card slot based product, meaning we have a SKU for every possible configuration from 1x7 to 7x1. We'll discuss that in a little more detail here shortly. The product supports fully Dolby, True HD, Dolby Digital, Dolby DTS HD, for example. It has an internal aided library. Currently we show here 6. At times it may be more than that actually, as we are constantly improving the product, and we have fantastic resources here for you to ensure that this is compatible with all the current gear out there. And it supports the advanced HDMI features, 3D, 4K by 2K, as we discussed. So here we see the custom SKUs. How is this achieved? Well, we have a SKU for every possible configuration that adds up to 8, nothing less. So there are no short stacking, if you will, of these matrix. It must be fully populated. But say, for example, you need 6 inputs, 2 outputs. We have KD-HDMS 4x4-6x2 for that. Now you order it as the appropriate configuration. We here at the factory will populate that configuration according to your order because it needs the appropriate amount of input or output cards, not to mention the appropriate firmwares loaded into the system. So this is a huge advantage that Key Digital offers with this Hercules and with the Digital IQ series that we're going to introduce you to here shortly. There are other products in the industry that are card slot based. However, those parts do not have the flexibility that the Hercules and Digital IQ series Key Digital parts offer you, because those card slots are specific input or output card slots. For example, that 8x8 from the other guys with card slots, it must be 8x8. There's no way to increase beyond 8 inputs or 8 outputs with that product. Whereas with Key Digital, basically our backbone is androgynous. Our backbone is androgynous. It is the card slot that determines whether this is going to be an input or an output. So using Key Digital Hercules series, KD, HDMS 4x4, or any custom configuration thereof, as you see, having the RJ45, it must be used with shielded Cat6. But let's take a look here. These bounds, the bounds again that marry in with the matrix is the KD KD-BBTX, KD-BBRX. Just showing you here a visual graphic of what kind of distance you could expect with the KD-BB balance married in with the HDMS 4x4 or any custom configurations. You are looking at 150 feet is a maximum distance, okay? So we talked a little earlier about 140, 270. We're going to say 150 maximum distance. You may find yourself a very good Cat6 shielded cable that is able to deliver that, or of course we could go beyond that with the Key Digital Cat6 shielded cable. 270 for 1080i, 720p, 1080p, 24 frames per second. So we've seen this graphic before. This is the KD-BB-RX balun, just as a quick reminder of what all is on there. Now that you've seen the matrix that it can marry in with, putting together the system instead of a transmit to receive type system using the BB, a matrix to receive, or even a transmit to matrix. Now you can see this go to the next step here in your system building and the parts you utilize. HDMI, DVI, DisplayPort on that HDMI connection. Left-right analog or PCM digital audio. Now, again, PCM or analog audio is only available on those external connections that are highlighted in green in the case of a non-HDCP system. We're going to show you the code set, the command that you will issue to the HDMS or HDBT product that will instruct the matrix which outputs are not going to require HDCP and instead can use the balun to extend that external audio as well. Again, we're not violating HDCP here, so remember, if you're trying to extend an HDCP source and you'd rather go with that and you're trying to go with external audio, not going to happen, okay? You're not going to end up with anything. Control on the Phoenix connector outlined in blue, IR and RS-232. Now we see that the matrix itself is a hub for your control system, and we'll show you in more depth there exactly how that works in just a moment. The 8x8 version, very similar product, except for it utilizes HD-based technology, just as the KD Cat HD 500 and KD Cat HD 500 FW baluns did. This is the KD HD 8x8 BT because of that HD-based technology it utilizes here. With this part, you're looking at distances of now we go into the KD HD 8x8 BT, which is very similar to the HDMS 4x4. Many of the technologies are built from the same platform as the 4x4, except for, as this model indicates, this matrix switcher utilizes HD-based technology. If you recall from our previous level 1 part 2, HD-based technology is utilized in our KD Cat HD 500, KD Cat HD 500 FW to really give you that extended range, a very powerful technology, and that is now built in to this Digital IQ series switcher, KD HD 8x8 BT. Now with this product, you're looking at 1080p 60 up to 400 feet, 1080i, 720p, 1080p at 24 frames per second, up to 600 feet. Using this matrix switcher, HD 8x8 BT, must be used with KD Cat HD 500 RX. We sell the receive balun independently, that is. And those distances are obtained when you use that balun, that matrix, with Key Digital Cat6 shielded cabling, KD Cat6 STP1X. We of course recommend our RJ45 connectors as well, KD RJ45 SC. Now if you don't utilize Key Digital Cat6 cabling and you're working with a third party Cat6 shielded cabling, you're looking at 300 feet, 1080p, 500 feet, 720p or 1080i. So there is a huge advantage, and as we showed you before, maybe you don't need 400 feet for 1080p. Maybe you don't need 600 feet for 1080i or 720p. However, we can all agree now that having that extra distance, that buffer period before you approach that cliff, as we demonstrated earlier, is wildly important. So if you can run the cabling, the walls are down, or there's an opportunity for you to put in just one of these cables to every zone is all that you need. Just one. Just because you want to run 4 or 5 Cat cables doesn't mean they all have to be key digital cable, but put one of them as that KD Cat6 STP1X. Okay, so this is the HD 8x8 BT, where also we have SKUs from 1x15 to 15x1. Okay, now you'll notice on the 8x8 BT, the input side does not have the RJ45 option, just the HDMI option. Okay, so if you needed to integrate some of your sources from outside of the equipment rack location, you're going to have to do that the traditional way, that is a transmit to receive side bound, and of course we offer that as part of the full circle solution here at Key Digital. So this is huge, the fact that these card slot configurations are possible. Why is it so huge to you? Whether it even be with the Hercules 4x4 generic or the Digital IQ 8x8 generic configurations, think about this. Key Digital here has sold almost as many 6x10 configuration matrix switchers as 8x8. Now that's saying a lot. And what does that say if you dig a little deeper is that there are some sweet spots out there. For example, 6 inputs with 10 outputs. And with every other product out there, again, without that versatile backbone, if you need more than 8 independent inputs or more than 8 independent outputs, you're familiar now that you would have to go up to their 16x16 configuration. For those of you who have built these systems, have specified these systems, or even just price shopping right now, you know that that is a huge price jump from that 8x8 rack space size, 8x8 price point, up to a 16x16. So there's a huge amount of value that we're able to offer there with this card slot configuration, not to mention all of the features that this product has. So a graphic here showing you the performance offered by the HD 8x8 BT. It marries in with that Key Digital Cat6 STP1X to deliver 400 feet at 1080p or third-party cabling, 300 feet 1080p. Again, 500, 600 third-party Key Digital for your 720p or comparable resolutions. And this is HD 8x8 BT with KD Cat HD 500 RX, as in receive. Here's a closer look at the Balun. In the orange square, we have our video and audio connections. Let's concentrate specifically on the receive side, which is to your right. Your HDMI DVI display port will be coming out of that port. Control, 2 3.5 ports for bidirectional IR control. DB9 connection for RS-232. Ethernet is also available and can be routed through the matrix and to the receive Balun. One cable is all you need, where again 300, 500 is your distance with third-party manufactured shielded Cat6 cable, or 400, 600 for the part with the Key Digital Cat6 shielded cable, KD Cat6 STP1X. Now, what are the benefits? Well, if you recall the slide from earlier in the curriculum, the benefits we emphasized before was the EDA control, the HDMI pass-through, and that extended range FW. Of course, the EDA control is built into the matrix, so that's still an offering. The pass-through is, well, if we consider the output is also available on HDMI and the RJ45 port on the matrix, we have a sort of a pass-through there. But again, we're concentrating on the receive side here. The extended range, actually, this product is currently under development of a way that automatically the receive Balun will communicate with the HDMI, the HD 8x8 BT matrix switcher, and when that calculation is made that says we are now in excess of X distance, it will automatically be made that the receive Balun switches into the FW mode, which gives you extended range but limits the distance to, or limits the resolution rather, excuse me, to 720p, 1080i, 1080p at 24 frames per second. So all these features we talk about here, let's take a closer look at them. On the input side, you have an HDMI port that supports HDMI, DVI, DisplayPort as well. RJ45 input, again, not available on the HD8x8 BT, but you can see here some of the really big advantages that offers you. For example, this in a residential application is ideal for integrating a Blu-ray player that is located outside of the equipment rack, or in a commercial application is ideal for integrating a PC, document camera, etc. A source that cannot be located in that equipment rack can go into a KD-BB TX balun over that single Cat6 shielded, plug in the RJ45 port, you're good to go. Audio, of course, the HDMI connection supports both video and audio, as does the RJ45 through the balun, but you also have RCAs on the input side with these parts, Hercules and Digital IQ. Huge advantage here. Let's break it down again by application type. In a residential application, this presents a huge advantage. Key Digital Hercules series and Digital IQ series, for my money, is the only matrix in the marketplace that enables you to go to zones that require multi-channel audio. For example, the zones that the audio is powered by an AV receiver that supports your Dolby formats, etc. You could go to those output zones or those outputs with multi-channel audio by selecting video from the incoming HDMI signal and your audio from the incoming HDMI signal as well. When the source is given a handshake that says, hey, you have the green light for your Dolby, for example, both HDMI video and audio are on that HDMI connection, and now you've got Dolby on that coming from that source and into that HDMI input. But imagine in that very same system, you have a display on the wall, and that display, of course, is only able to deliver to you 2-channel audio, and the majority of displays available in the industry today only support 2-channel audio. That being said, there are some that do support Dolby incoming formats and decode them to 2-channel. Very cool technology built into the television. But say you have one of those TVs that only supports 2-channel audio, what if you're trying to select that video source that's already outputting Dolby audio format? Well, then that display wouldn't be able to give you any audio whatsoever in the case that you were working with another manufacturer's matrix where it only offered you those 8 HDMI ports. You've seen many of those matrix before, 4x4, 8x8, etc. All it is HDMI connections, severely limiting your system's capabilities. Not with the Key Digital. Hercules, Digital IQ have those RCA inputs from your source. You could go HDMI, of course, into the HDMI connection, and also run an RCA either left and right, or your digital PCM, depending on what type of source it is. You could usually go into that PCM setup menu of that source and tell it, hey, we're doing 2-channel here, and now for your other zones in the system that require 2-channel audio, you're going to select video from the HDMI port, audio from those RCAs through a switching command that we will introduce you to later in this portion of the training. So very big advantage. Actually, before proceeding, the advantage for the commercial installation is DVI, for example. DVI does not feature audio on that connectivity, as we discussed, where HDMI is video and audio. If you're working with one of those matrix that is just HDMI connection, so go ahead and take your hands and kind of black out that everything below those HDMI connectors on this graphic here, and you'll realize that what am I going to do with the audio from my DVI source? There's nowhere to go with it through the matrix. Not with Key Digital. We're able to consolidate that audio with the HDMI video stream and output it to you on a single wire. Or separate audio, as you've learned here, because the output side as well is a full independent matrix. We'll discuss that in a little more depth here in a moment. Control routing. Let's highlight these 3.5 plugs. And if you recall, on the BBTX, BBRX, you have the Phoenix connector. How does this work? We're going to discuss that more in level 3 in a lot of depth, but let's just talk to you about the basic principle. You give us 1 or 2 ports from your control system, okay, RS-232 and IR, we're able to route that signal through every single 3.5 port on this matrix, or any combination of 3.5 ports on this matrix. Additionally, any BBTX, BBRX that's married in with the HDMS, or CAT HD 500RX that's married in with the HD 8x8 BT. If you do the math, you got, for example, the 8x8 BT, you've got 16 3.5 plugs. You've got 8 receive balance. The receive balance can be IR and RS-232 simultaneously. So let's say we're controlling 2 devices potentially per receive balance. That brings us to 16 plus another 16 3.5 ports, 32 total devices that we're able to route with as little as 1 or 2 control ports from the control system. Now Key Digital is delivering a huge value. Again, 32 peripheral devices we're able to route control to via as little as 1 or 2 control ports from the control system. Again, in level 3, we will discuss that in more depth. On the output side, HDMI and RJ45, they are both active simultaneously. You see the little cartoon here, the graphic that's come up. You have one display connected via the BBRX balun, one display connected via the HDMI output. This is huge for your residential applications again. Imagine that master bedroom, master bathroom, where they don't really want to fiddle around with the remote, do they? They just want to walk into that other zone and continue viewing what they have been viewing in their master bathroom, or master bedroom rather. Similarly, they might have you hang the display on the wall, you got the cable ran, hey, this is just the guest room, we don't need to sacrifice an independent output, do we? Let's go ahead and just utilize this mirrored output connectivity that is available. HDMI and RJ45 both active simultaneously all the time. Okay, in the commercial environments, this is a huge advantage for your local monitors or for your conference room type applications where they have more often than not 2 displays now, one kind of a peripheral display and one main display. Imagine your churches or any kind of presentation lobby where you will have a projector that everybody, of course, attending the seminar is viewing, yet your presenter, in order to see what everybody else is seeing, has to look over their shoulder. Not anymore. You have that local monitor at the lectern there, showing the exact same thing at the same time without so much as sacrificing an additional independent output or even risking going through additional hardware. With HDMI, you know, you want to be safe. This is the surefire way to achieve that. On the output side, the RCAs, again, as we were discussing earlier, we're able to have output RCAs always active. Perfect for setting into an amplifier or a distributed audio system of sorts, okay? There are some exceptions, and you'll want to go to the website as to when those RCAs may not have a signal on them, okay? Just namely, when you input a signal that is, say, 7.1 audio from the HDMI connection, and that's the audio source you've selected, we're not going to be able to decode that to 2-channel audio. We have on keydigital.com a very convenient audio processing chart, it is called, that you will refer to in order to find when you can utilize those RCAs, but more often than not, they are active. So, in the previous presentation, Level 2, Part 1, we showed you some of the power that these matrix switchers deliver. We're going to do that as well here in the HDMI portion of the matrix presentation here. Just as a reminder, 2 very helpful commands. Help, simply the letter H, you hit enter, and or status, STA, as in the first 3 letters of the word status, you hit enter, you're going to get a lot of feedback. Where do you do this? This is done traditionally in terminal type software such as Hyperterminal, PuTTY, etc. Or even in your control system, you may have a terminal emulator of sorts built in there. You're going to want something that is bidirectional because obviously a lot of what we're about to discuss here depends on the bidirectional ability of the terminal. So let's look at the help command. This is going to be very, very similar whether we're looking at the Hercules series or the Digital IQ series products. There may be a few varieties, but and of course that may even vary by firmware version. So you'll want to resort with us to get the latest command list for the products that you're looking at designing into your upcoming applications. If we hit the letter H, we open up the hyperterminal software, for example, we enter the baud rate of either of these products, which is 57,600. We leave it at 8, none, 1. We set our flow control to none, and we go ahead and apply that setting, and we have now the blank white window of the terminal software. We're all familiar with that, hopefully. Hit the letter H. Here's what comes back. You will have the feedback from the matrix. It says, I'm an HDMS 4x4. Here's my firmware version. It's going to tell you, again, help is a full list of every possible RS-232 commands. It's going to tell you some very basic commands. For example, hey, you entered H for help, and it's going to be very chatty, the feedback. You'll see there's going to be a few pages we're going to go over here just as a response of hitting letter H. What if you don't want a whole book to be written to you? Instead, you want something a little more focused. For example, I want to know the help command, that just pertains to the input side, input setup commands, or the output setup commands, etc. Power off, power on, of course, is PN. System input setup commands here. For example, if we were to issue just PHI, as you see there, here's what you would see. SPI XXVY, video input port. Remember on that HDMS 4x4, you had the option, HDMI or RJ45. Here is how you determine which one you're going to be selecting from, because it's an A-B switch of sorts. You have to choose one or the other. So for example, if I were to enter SPI01V2, now my input number 1 on my HDMS 4x4 is looking for its incoming signal on the RJ45 port. Beautiful thing to do. You plug in, take your Blu-ray player, PC, set-top box, etc., plug it into that HDMI port on that input 1. Guess what? You're not going to get so much as a sync light, a blue sync light, which is should be active if we were selecting the HDMI port. Similarly, you plug in a balun, your source into the balun, and connect that Cat6 shielded. Now you're going to get that blue sync light that locks in on the card slot. SPI XX RCA-Y is the RCA input set for analog or digital audio. Associated audio command, we've discussed this kind of before here, where you want input 1 to always be associated with the audio from slot YY and type Z. Okay, so with this product, because there's different locations for your audio, there is, you're going to find many commands here where we specify the slot and the location within the slot. So for example, SPI01 means we're going to do an custom AV association for slot 1, AAYYZ, AA meaning audio association, YY, say we're going to do YY02, type Z, let's say Z is 3, okay, 3 equals external analog audio. So if we were to, again, starting from the beginning here, SPI01, AA023, now every time I select source 1, with a basic switching command, it's going to be source 1 is going to be the audio actually from that CAT port. Remember, we did the video input port setup, yet the audio is going to come from slot 2 on the RCA. So you can see here how this full independent matrix attribute is really coming together here, and how you're able to sculpt that to meet your system. System output setup commands. On the 4x4, your outputs are referred to as the card slot number. Very important note here, we're going to talk about it a few times throughout the training curriculum, but remember, HDMS 4x4, every command, in fact, refers to the card slot number, whether it be the input or the output. Whereas in the HD 8x8 BT, we return to a traditional 1 through 8, 1 through 8, for example, input number, output number, but not card slot number. So just like we had the RCA set up on the input side previously, here is your option to toggle between analog left and right or digital PCM. Basically, it's plugged into the left RCA connector, which on the silk screen it tells you to do so. So toggling between, for example, SPO. Let's say we're still working with the 4x4 SPO08. That's actually output 4, RCA 2. Now output 4 on the RCAs there is now digital PCM audio. We have a video mute, enable, disable, toggle. Again, XX refers to the card slot number. We have an audio mute. We have an audio video mute. So very independent there. Do you need video and audio together, or just video or just audio to be muted? Very, very handy for example, you might want video muting in a projector type application. You may want audio muting in a similar presentation style application. Here is the most generic switching command for the HDMS or the HD 8x8BT. That is your SPO XX SIYY. Now when it comes to switching commands, level 3, we have a very detailed portion of a course that will go through all the various switching commands here, so keep that in mind. But this is the most generic switching command because SPO XX SIYY, let me take one step back, sorry. This is your very basic, if your inputs are all HDMI and you don't want to do any of that selecting video from 1 and audio from 3 type switching. Instead, you want video coming off of input 1, HDMI connection, audio coming off of input 1, HDMI connection. This is the switching command for you. We have a switch video only command, the SB. We have a switch audio only command. Okay? Now remember, with the audio, there's some variables there, aren't there? This SA works in harmony with the SV and SI commands. So if you've already made a switch using SI or SV, now you can move within that location using SA. It's a way that achieves this in a two-part sequence. Or we have a way that achieves it in a single part sequence, SPO XX, that's your output number, the XX, SAA, SAA YY1, YY2. So let's take a look at that. YY1 is your the slot number, okay? YY2 is the location within that slot. So, using the 4x4 again, if we were to do SPO05, remember, card slot 05, also known as output number 1. So SPO05 is how we tell the switcher we're doing a command that pertains to output number 1. SAA, YY, let's do YY1, let's do it as 03. So we're selecting audio that's from card slot 03. YY2, we'll make that 01. That means within that card slot 3, we're taking the audio off of that HDMI connection. Okay? Let's do a quick example for HD 8x8BT, because I want to remind you on the 4x4 version, where we refer to everything as the card slot number. On the 8x8 version, it returns back to that 1 through 8, input, output, respectively type. Now we'll proceed to the output setup commands. SPO XX RCAY. XX is your output card slot or output number, depending on if you're dealing with the Hercules or Digital IQ. Just like we had on the input side. Setting Y to 1 or Y to 2 determines, are we dealing with an analog left and right signal there, or is it a digital PCM audio signal that we're looking for? On the output side, we can also do a video mute, do an audio mute, or do an audio video mute. We have switching commands here. Now, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, a whole lot of detail, because we are going to go into more detail on that on level 3, okay, where we're going to do some of the advanced switching options there. But I will have you know that the SPO XX SIYY is the most generic of all the switching commands, the one that is most commonly used, because this assumes that your output XX, whether it be the card slot or the output number again, varying on Hercules or Digital IQ, when it selects your input YY, it's going to select the audio and the video from the HDMI port on YY, okay? So that's your generic switching command. You have a video only switch, an audio only switch. We have an audio only switch. Well, actually, let me back up here. SAYY is an audio switch that works with the video switch to say, okay, we're going to follow that SVYY command, but where within the card are we taking the audio? Because remember, you have a few different locations it could come from. It could come from an HDMI location for audio on the input. It could come from an RJ45 connection on the input if you're dealing with Hercules. It could come from the RCAs. Is it analog or is it digital? You see 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the options there. SAA, YY1, YY2 is a means of, within a single command, determining the, not only doing a video switch plus an audio switch, but also where within that card are we, what is the variable that is the audio location. SYYZ is a similar command. They have some different functionality though, some different common uses that you'll find more out in level 3 about those. Or SB, switch both, that works with that AV association that we set up on the input side. Okay, so if you had set up an AV association, this SB command is how you utilize that. So when we think about switching, without spending a whole lot of time talking about it again, you're going to hear us repeat it. Just remember, there's really 3 variables to every switching command with these products, because the variables for video, what is the card slot? We've already determined in our initial setup on the input side, when we select video, when we're doing a video switch, the input slot is already determined. Is it on the HDMI or is it on the Cat5? It's one or the other. Again, we talked about that. But the other 2 remaining variables, the video is just a card slot, audio, card slot, and then the second variable for audio, within that card slot, where are we taking the audio from? So that's why there's 3 variables for every switching command, not just 2. Continuing with the output side, audio volume, balance, bass, you see AL because low, mid, high, okay, treble adjustment, audio delay. We have the output format. Now, this is a very, very cool command that has come in handy many times. Just ask some of our many Pro AV customers who utilize this product and have a variety of displays, some of them with HDMI connections, some of them with DVI connections, and with other gear in the marketplace, they've been ending up with a neon green or a neon, like a pinkish signal on their DVI displays. That is because of a color spacing issue. And HDMI and DVI, for the most part, again, should be compatible, but sometimes you do have a color spacing issue. Only Key Digital, for my money again, only Key Digital allows you to determine and force. Out of the box, it's an auto. The matrix reads the display that's connected and says, are you an HDMI connection or are you a DVI connection? And it will accommodate appropriately. But sometimes that's not enough. That's what everybody else stops. Where we go beyond, we can force. Is it, are we going to force it to DVI or are we going to force it to HDMI? Is this for output XX on the H connection or on the C connection? You can see it there, HDMI or Cat5. So it's a very cool command. EDID, also something we're going to spend a lot of time discussing in level number 3, because this is a very important piece of making your system bulletproof as Key Digital can deliver you. But SPC, EDID, XX, H or C or D, YY. What does this mean? Well, the way the handshaking works, there's 3 options, and we've seen this before. XX is the input. So again, the handshake goes from the display to the source in a generic one-to-one application. In an application with our matrix or our hardware in the middle, it comes from our hardware to the source. The source is XX. Is it in the 8x8 system 01 through 8, for example? What input number? The 3 options. Are we going to go copy from a device that's connected via H, HDMI, or an output device that's connected via C, Cat cabling, Cat6 shielded? Or are we going to connect to, are we going to take from our default library D and relay that, one of our internal library settings, here we go, and relay that to the source? Here you go. Default one, currently on the current firmware, 1080i 2-channel audio, default 2, 1080p 2-channel audio, default 3 is a DVI computer resolution 1280 by 1024, default 4 1920 by 1200, computer comparable to 1080p, default 5 1080i with all audio formats including HD audio, default 6 is similar but for 1080p video resolution, default 7 is 3D with 2-channel audio, or default 8 3D with every audio format. Okay, so this is how it's all determined. Front button enable or disable. If you have a very nice control system and programming that's invested in yet your gear is in an installation where perhaps it's a little vulnerable to wandering fingers, etc., you can disable the front button control. Front screen. There is a blue LED screen on these. Would you like to enable that or disable that? Cards control signal, okay? This is where we begin to discuss IR and RS-232 control routing. Again, we're going to go into more detail in level 3 on that, some of these advanced features, just to recap: the switching, the EDID, the control routing. Okay, those are what we consider advanced features of the products. But you have to tell each card, hey, I'm an IR card or am I an RS-232 card before you do the routing, because it's handling a certain type of the signal. Okay, so that's a part of what we're doing. And where you see hex there, we're going to discuss that in more detail, but we do use some hex values determining what's IR, what's RS-232. This SPC RSXX, this is the response. Of course, assuming we're in hyperterminal right now, you issue a command, that response comes from our matrix, right? When you get this help response there, for example, or the status response, or even just issuing a switching command and getting that response from our switcher. However, if you have a projector that's connected via RS-232 and you'd like that response to come from there, then we can do that. Not a problem. You can see 00 is the value of the switcher, the main PC of the switcher. Or do you want it to come from CAT output 1 through 8, RJ45? In the case of the 4x4, there are 8 RJ45 options. In the case of 8x8, of course, there are also 8. Or do you want it to come from the serial port, the 3.5 plug? It says serial IR, but of course it's IR or 232. There are 8 on the 4x4 or a whole 16 to choose from in the case of the 8x8 Digital IQ series. IR direction and source selection. This is a matrix switching command for IR signals. Again, we'll talk about it more in level 3. We can do it in a primary way or a secondary way. That's how you establish bidirectional communication. You could use the same port in 2 directions. IR masking control is a means of sending us a single command, and we could spread it. We could go to all or to just specific groups, and instead of itemizing one by one every destination for that signal via a hex value, you could tell us in a very easy way. That's the IR masking. Again, we're going to talk about these more in level 3. This is, let's see. Sorry. I don't want to jump too far in here. We're just trying to show you what all is possible with the switcher. And this, again, can all be accessed through the help command. RS-232. Again, a whole matrix for RS-232. We have configure CAT output type. This is where we determine, are we, with our receive bounds, using that external audio from the BBRX, or are we extending DDC information, which is where HDCP would be carried, for example. Okay, so this can be configured through the matrix, because essentially that matrix is a transmit side balun. Calibrate Cat5 input. This is for your input CAT ports on your HDMS 4x4. The BBRX baluns have a rotary knob for equalization. The BBRX balun is essentially built into your inputs on your HDMS 4x4. So without that physical rotary for equalization settings, this is how you have to access that. Factory default and with the factory default, you are able to apply an EDID setting that we had seen earlier to the entire system. Okay, versus where the EDID setting that we went through before was 1 by 1 by 1, assuming your different sources may want different handshakes to be relayed to them. Finally, with the status commands, which we're about to show you in more depth, status command is also a very lengthy feedback. If you want something that's a little more concise, instead of global status, you can have status that's pertaining to the control portion, status that's on the input portion, status that's on the output portion, or even where we see parentheses M. What that means, if you were to do MSTA, it would be all machine status. This is less verbose. This is less easy, of course, for a human to understand. It's more alphanumerical and something that you in your programming could utilize to communicate more easily with your control system when doing bidirectional drivers. We have status for specific outputs, status for specific inputs, and that ends it. So now from the help command, when do you use that? Just as a reminder, we saw this in the last step. You're going to refer to it as a great introduction to what this product could do, because this is really where you have 10 bullet points on the catalog page and how you're able to see really to elaborate on how these functions, features, benefits are actually achieved. Okay, so the first time you get your hands on the product, you're going to want to plug in and see this. You're going to want to become familiar with it. Troubleshooting. Hey, I don't have video from my source 1 at all. I don't have a blue sync light. Well, we may ask you, can you go in, can we terminal in this product? Let's toggle, maybe you're selecting CAT port instead of HDMI, or vice versa. Or mastering the matrix. There are a lot of extremely cool features to this product. You, maybe not the first time, or maybe the first time, depending on what kind of systems you're accustomed to delivering, you will be able to master this by dealing with the help command, and also, of course, dealing with the resources available at Key Digital, learning through online training webinars, on-demand trainings, etc., as you're doing today. Thank you very much. It's easy, convenient, and informative. And again, you know now how powerful these products are. You knew that they were powerful before you took this class. Here's how you really put the saddle and harness the power of Key Digital's matrix switchers, enabling you to really take advantage of what we're offering you, maximize the value of what we're presenting you, maximize your value to the customer, and instead of stacking all this additional equipment that perhaps would have been necessary, by utilizing Key Digital, it's all built into one box. So as we look at the status options, which again, in your terminal, you're just going to type the letters STA, as in Sierra Tango Alpha, the first 3 letters of the word status, and you're going to get a response from us. Again, it's going to start off with the model number and firmware version. Okay, we're going to tell you global system status. Power is on. Front buttons are enabled. Front screen is enabled. As we saw, we have the options to control that earlier. The first section, it's 3 sections. The first section is all pertaining to control. Okay, the response is from the main CPU of the matrix switcher versus some external device. As we discussed, we can do that. Primary and secondary channels for your IR, which is utilizing the 4x4. In the 8x8, you have essentially unlimited amount of channels. It'll tell you where we're going with those. You have this handy dandy matrix that tells you slot numbers. So, of course, in the 8x8, it reads all the way to 16. Mode, IR. You saw where we could toggle the mode of that card slot. Cat5 source, meaning we're treating the cat as a destination. Where is the source from that destination? Is it the main 3.5 plug? Or is it another 3.5 plug maybe within one of the card slots? Okay. Serial source, that's the 3.5 plug source. So you can see there's the source, there's the destination. This is a matrix, basically as if you were charting out video and audio matrixing. Excuse me. You have input status. Again, this was pulled through terminal through one of our 4x4 systems. So you have 4x4 inputs. It tells you the port. Is it CAT or is it HDMI? As you can see right now on this specific unit, card 1 is looking for the signal on the RJ45 port, not the HDMI port. Of course, out of the box, it's always the HDMI, okay? If it were receiving a signal, which obviously this was taken without a source connected, you would even be able to see the resolution that the product was receiving. You would be able to see if there was a custom AV association. You see that the RCA is set for analog. You can see the EDID that has been assigned to that source. You can see what is the audio format. It'll tell you 2-channel or multi-channel or Dolby. It tells you encryption, meaning is this an HDCP source that is connected? And it tells you all of that information for every input. On the output side, output 5 you see here, aka output 1 in the 4x4. Card slot 5 is selecting right now video and audio from slot 4. On the audio is on the HDMI port that we're selecting it from. On the output side, our RCAs are all set up as analog, as you can see as we read from 5 to 8. They are active, meaning they are not muted. You have your volume, your bass, volume, balance, low, mid, and treble, okay? That's what we read across there, V, B, L, M, T, and lip sync is LP, okay? 0, 0 meaning no delay is added. On that output HDMI port, it would tell you what it's connected to. For example, if you're connected to a Sony XBR display, it's going to tell you XBR, and it's actually going to read the model because this is all digital. In that EDID, all of that information is in there. We're able to gather it from the display. HDMI is set in auto mode because nothing's connected right now. It defaults to DVI. CAT port has DDC because we did not select external audio over DVC. Also, there's no connection made there, but just like with the HDMI, we go so far as telling you the model number even of what's connected, and we have not forced it to DVI, we have not forced it to HDMI. Right now it's at auto. Okay, so you can read that for every input and every output, a very elaborate status command, and that provides so much help in troubleshooting your systems, okay, and really understanding your systems. And when people could see this visual aid to an HDMI system, it really demystifies the whole thing because, of course, a lot of people have become frustrated in the past with HDMI. Why isn't it working? Well, hey, let's take a look at the status. Let's see if we can figure some things out, tweak a few things, and up and running in no time, okay? Now, that does it for the status. Now, we're going to talk about what perhaps is most important with key digital matrix switching. This is our one key is all you need buffering technology. In the Hercules series and in the Digital IQ series, we utilize full buffering technology. Buffering does not refer to time. Buffering means between the display and between the source is our hardware. The source, for all it knows, we are its display. The display, for all it knows, we are the source. Now, we may have seen, we've definitely discussed this a little previously in the training curriculum here, where we authenticate the source, we authenticate the display. We have to be the traffic police, if you will, for HDCP. As it pertains to EDID, we are also, we treat it in its own respective layer. So if we look here at the bottom of the screen, you see a formula that is just absolutely beaten into our heads here at Key Digital, something that we mumble in our sleeps here at Key Digital. That is HDMI equals TMDS. That's your video and audio portion of an HDMI signal, but HDMI is much more than that. HDMI equals TMDS plus HDCP. That's the copyright protection. More often than not, it is there. Of course, not always there. Plus EDID. That is your handshake information, your resolution, compatibilities, etc. Now we're going to take a look at two opposing approaches to making a matrix system. One that is still unfortunately utilized today by many manufacturers. We will not name names. And Let's also acknowledge that many have learned and are offering different products now, but this is certainly something that we've seen here in our lab when we grab a hold of some samples from out in the field from competitors. That is the matrix switch conventional system. Let's focus in on that for a moment. To make a matrix switcher, you have 4 sources, you have 4 displays, for example. In the analog world, you were able to treat it just as a video and audio signal. Your video and audio from source 1 essentially is split 4 ways. Internally in that matrix, there's a 1x4 DA. Each output essentially selects from any of the 4 sources. There is a 4x1 switch. You combine those 2 things, you create a matrix, which is a pinnacle of a distribution amplifier and a switcher. That was all good and fine in the analog world. In the digital world, it created problems. A lot of these companies out there said, hey, we know how to make a matrix switcher. You use a combination of distribution amplifiers and switchers, not acknowledging that there are 2 other layers, because that old school way, that conventional system way, only distributes and switches the video and audio portion of the signal. And essentially what happened then when they created this and when they carried over old technology into the new world, they created a direct channel of communication between the displays and the sources and vice versa, and it creates many problems. For example, if you are creating a direct channel of communication between displays and sources, and one source is being viewed by multiple displays, let's say 2 displays are viewing that source, but then a 3rd display wants to view that source. Well, now that source is able to sense that, hey, there's a 3rd display viewing me now. I need to accommodate, I need to adjust my EDID outputting, or I need to adjust my output based on the incoming EDID from this display, considering all displays that are viewing me. This takes time. Usually it's approximately 2 seconds per display for this source to have to calculate and accommodate, determine what it's going to output to accommodate X amount of displays viewing it. Okay. This also presents issues with keys. Keys meaning how many handshakes a source can support at any given time. And traditionally it's only 1, right? Again, that 1-to-1 scenario. HDMI software actually has the capability to go beyond 1, but as the industry and the source equipment becomes more and more commoditized, and the manufacturer has determined we're only going to give it 1 key because they don't have custom AV applications in mind. Let's take a look here at the key digital method of delivering matrix systems with our full buffer technology. You see that we separate the HDCP, we separate the TMDS, and we separate the EDID. We treat each of those 3 layers of HDMI in their own respective manner. Okay? What do we mean by that? Well, let's start at the top there. HDCP. We are the traffic police. Let's assume that all of our sources are HDCP capable, or requiring HDCP. Okay, they are encrypted. Key Digital must authenticate each of the 4 displays for their HDCP. Okay, if one of the 4 displays is not HDCP compliant, Key Digital will shut down that connection between the matrix and the display. The other 3 of the 4 displays, though, are HDCP capable. Hey, not a problem. They're still going to continue to receive that signal. Whereas, if we take a look at the conventional system, if that source sensed, because of that direct communication that was created there, if that source sensed that one of the 4 displays viewing it is not HDCP compliant, guess what? The source now is the traffic police. It's going to shut down its output altogether, affecting the entire system. And that's a no-no, my friends. You don't want to do that. Because there are going to be applications where perhaps, HDMI is certainly a growing connectivity type, as we've discussed earlier. There are going to be applications where there are, especially in your commercial applications, non-HDCP, HDMI devices, yet you still want to be able to view your HDCP content on your HDCP compliant displays. Key Digital, acting as that buffer in the middle, is able to determine which ones play by the rules, which ones do not, depending on the source, and shut down just those respective outputs if need be, not affecting any other outputs there. EDID, we discussed earlier, if you have that direct channel, how slow that could result in, 2 seconds per display. Imagine an 8x8 system, that's 16 seconds for switching time with some products out there. With EDID in our full buffer technology products, because we are the authentication point for the source. Again, you saw earlier, how do we provide that EDID for the source, either from our default handshake library built into our product, or by copying from a display, adding it to our software, and then relaying it to the source. So it goes from here to here, from here to here to here, I should say, never from display to the source. Now what happens, that source is always authenticated just by one EDID handshake. It doesn't have to constantly adjust and adapt based on X amount of displays viewing it, which is a variable number, as you guys know. So as a result, our switching time is exactly how long that display takes to switch from its own HDMI input 1 to HDMI input 2 with our full buffer products, Hercules series and Digital IQ. Now let's look at the Phantom series of HDMI matrix switchers. This is KD HD MSW 4x4. Now this product here is on a different plane from the Hercules series and the Digital IQ series. Now this is really one of the few times that Key Digital has ever designed a product with a price point in mind. People have been very successful with the Hercules series of products, for example, and would love to use Key Digital every time in the HDMI application world, and yet some applications just do not have the budget that affords them that luxury. Well, here is the Phantom series of HDMI matrix switchers, which is an entire kit, in fact, including KD HDMSW 4x4 matrix switcher, 4 RX receive balance, that is the model KD CAT HD RX, I believe it is referred to as. It's included in the package, so you don't have to itemize that separately anyhow. 8 HDMI cables as well. So it is a whole kit, essentially everything you would need in your very generic applications to come in with open one box and have everything you need inside. Now, this switcher takes from the platform of the Hercules and Digital IQ, and we were able to streamline, eliminating some of the niceties, advanced features of those products, and delivering you exactly what you need for these simple, cost-effective, budget-minded systems. What do we mean by that? Well, let's take a look at what we have here. Your input side, you have 4 inputs. It is a set number. There is no card slot flexibility with the Phantom series of matrix. On your output side, you still have CAT cable and you have HDMI. Now, the CAT outputs on this product are dual CAT, which is actually an advantage in many applications where the others were single. They required that shielded Cat 6. The KD HDMSW 4x4 does not require shielded Cat 6. It can work with unshielded cable or shielded cable, Cat 5, Cat 5e, Cat 6. Okay? And now we kept one of the most successful and most popular features of the Hercules and Digital IQ, which is simultaneously active outputs of the RJ45 and the HDMI, perfect as we described earlier for your commercial and residential applications. Another one comes to mind here. You got an AV receiver right there in the equipment rack. You go to that with the HDMI. You got a projector or a flat panel on the wall. You go to that display with the receive balun, utilizing the display or projector for video, utilizing the AV receiver for audio. Now, Phantom series does not route RS-232, and it's not as a sophisticated method of the control routing. Very simple though, we still allow it. You have 4 3.5 ports that is, again, a matrix for control for your IR signals. You have 3.5 ports with your signal on the tip there. By default, out of the box, what you plug into 1 goes out of balun 1. Plug into 2 goes out of balun 2 on output 2. 3 with 3, 4 with 4, but it is its own independent matrix, and we'll show you the command there where if you wanted to set it up that the IR signal feeding into 1 feeds all four outputs or any combination. Again, source, destination for control signal, not a problem. So there you see the matrix kit. One limitation that I didn't mention there, distance. The Phantom series HDMI matrix switchers with the included receive bounds support 1080p at 75 feet, 1080i 720p, 1080p 24 at 100 feet. So as you recall some of the Balun discussions that we had in level 1, you know that our basic dual cap Baluns are about 140, 280. This one is limited to 75, 100. Hey, you need to go those distance and you're still looking for a cost-effective solution. That's not to say this is not the piece for you. Of course, you could use an external Balun utilizing the HDMI output and just feed the transmitter that is located right there in the rack. So this is a kit including the matrix, 4 receive Baluns, 8 HDMI cables, full support for 3D, and still utilizing that one key software and hardware that has made Key Digital's matrix solutions so popular. Let's take a look at the help command. This will be very fast because again, it's a more limited product. You have H for help, power off, power on, status, okay. We have your switching command. Again, that SPOXXSIYY is a very generic switching command that we utilize in all of our current lineup of matrix switchers here at Key Digital. You have in the HDMSW 4x4 a return to the logic of output 1 through 4, input 1 through 4. Okay? Or you can do U or D, up or down from the current input setting selected by the given output. Here is your IR matrix command, okay, on that 3.5 plug. So again, maybe you have 4 different display manufacturers and you need 4 discrete IR codes. Go ahead, feed 1 through 4 from your control system, control block, etc. Or say you have all the same make and manufacturer and you'd like to just provide a single port from your control system. You can do that and handle it through the IR matrixing. The EDID commands, exact same command structure as we discussed earlier. The library is even very similar in the HDMSW 4x4. So whether it be this piece or the step-up models, you know that the software, the EDID handling is exactly the same. Front button enable, disable, or factory default with XX being the value of one of the EDIDs from the libraries there, 01 through 08. Status command. Again, entering status tells you what's going on at the current moment with the switcher. You got your input status command. It tells you the defaults or the EDID setting for that that's related to that input. Does not tell you, as in the Hercules or Digital IQ, what's the audio format, what's the video resolution, etc. It's a lot more streamlined as we saw there because we designed this product to deliver at a certain price point. Okay, so some of the hardware that would have been required to provide that full, robust status command is not possible in the Phantom series as it is in the Hercules and Digital IQ. Same thing with output. Basically, it just tells you what is the current input that each output is selecting for the video and also for the external IR routing. Now let's look at, we talked about full buffer, let's look at light buffer technology that we utilize in the HDMSW 4x4. With the full buffer, you may recall, as we looked inside the matrix, these yellow squares, 2 sets on the Hercules and Digital IQ full buffer products. On the light buffer product, you only have 1. Again, making a product to meet certain price point. Here's what this means for you. We equalize the incoming signal. It is still 1 key is all you need. What does that mean? Because we are the authentication point for the handshake handling, because we are an HDCP repeater, the source is only utilizing 1 key at any time, no matter how many displays are viewing it. We are the police for HDCP, ensuring that they are all compliant if they are viewing HDCP content. The EDID is managed by Key Digital, as we discussed. Multiple output viewing is supported at any time and in any combination, but there is a dynamic RX, that's the input side, reclocking, and that may result in a short blink. What does that mean? It happens anytime that multiple output viewing mode is taking place. Say display 1 is the only one selecting source 1, then display 2 jumps on source 1 as well. Any display viewing that source will experience a very short blink as that equalization for that input reclocks based on X meaning the amount of outputs viewing that source. So that is how we're able to lightly buffer the system, enabling, again, this to be a very value-driven product. Now, this is something that you will want to determine or consider with your client and your application. Is this something that will is a smart product to install or not? I can tell you from Key Digital's perspective here, we have sold many of these products, and it probably comes down to maybe 1% of the time where people even notice this blinking. And of course, performance is not affected during non-switching operation, only when switching and multiple display. So we know the matrix is now in the digital realm. And let's not forget the goal in mind here is delivering the entire system. That's, to deliver that entire system, you're no doubt going to need some peripheral devices to complement that matrix. So as a recap, here's a system here that has many video sources that are needing to go to many displays, which of course is the epitome of a matrix application. Now, we have a problem here with this system, which is two of the sources, as you can see, are component video. They are component video sources that need to go into an HDMI system. This is when you use a video processor. We pop these VP1250s in line. We introduce you to those in Level 2 Part 1. We're going to use them again in Level 2 Part 2 here because this is our Swiss Army knife type product. Whether it's an analog or digital system, this is the scaler you will use. And yet another category that we utilize, extremely common in HDMI or analog systems, is a cap-bound device. You have all the projectors in this system, for example. You need to get to each of those displays. The easiest, most cost-effective in many cases, and most flexible way of doing that is with Cat cabling. In this case, we're going to use Cat6 shielded, which Key Digital Cat6 STP1X would be the recommended cable there. So let's go into the VP1250 and explore it as it pertains to HDMI systems, digital systems, and building the bridge from analog to digital for some of your source devices there. VP1250, we've seen it. We've seen these slides once before. Okay, let's take a close look here now at some of the most common applications. For example, converting your VGA laptop or computer over to HDMI. You can see on the input side, it does not support a huge variety of incoming PC resolutions, but as you look, those 1, 2, 3, 4 check marks, and you look at the resolutions directly above them, you could see those are the most common, the most generic of generic resolutions that, whether it's Joe's laptop coming in, or Sally's laptop coming in, or a brand new laptop, or a 3, 4, 5-year-old laptop, these computer sources have these output resolutions as options and should integrate nicely into your existing system there, or into your HDMI system. HDMI outputting at, we could output at 640 by 480, 800 by 600. I'm sorry, I started right with the computer resolutions. I just looked straight down. But you can see 480p all the way up to 1080p. That includes your HD resolutions as well as your VESA computer type resolutions. A closer look at the back of the VP1250, you can see that HDMI output on the top there, right beside the VGA or component output that we would have utilized to integrate with an analog matrixing system. Now we're going to be utilizing that HDMI output port. On the input side, this VP1250 is ideal for scaling composite, S-video, VGA or component. Remember, it's shared, that connection dead center at the bottom row there. VGA or component on the 15-pin connection, 3-wire RCA cable is included. Also, you can input an HDMI or DVI source. Again, we could even down convert that to analog if you need, only if the source is non-HDCP encrypted. A quick look at the VP1250 as it would be more utilized as the focal point, the main unit of a small conference room type system, for example. You have a variety of source devices plugged into it. You have two outputs that are available. They're both active simultaneously in the case of a non-HDCP source. As we utilize it here with our matrix, and we'll remind you in just a moment, is typically just a one in, one out type scenario where in order to integrate this non-HDMI source into an HDMI system, we just feed right in. And maybe you have more than one non-HDMI source that needs to be integrated in that system. Typically, they would each get their own VP1250 so as to provide a full independent matrix with those non-analog sources. But if you don't need full independence, well, certainly you could utilize it in the method we show here as a switcher of sorts. Help command, we've seen this once before for the VP1250. Your output resolution and frame rate, okay? Your frame rate's 1 is 60 hertz. If your value for Y is 2, that's 50 hertz, as in PAL type frame rate, okay? Your output resolutions can vary from standard definition all the way up to 1080p, including all your SD, HD resolutions and your computer resolutions. Okay, now you're going to want to keep in mind that this, if you're integrating analog source into an HDMI system, the resolution setting of the VP1250 is going to actually override the EDID that the matrix provides that source, or provides the 1250 as it's the device that's actually feeding into the matrix. So just keep that in mind there. Nothing wrong with that, because these are very standard resolutions and information here. So shouldn't create any issues for you, but just something to take note of when you're determining what is the handshake going on there in the system. And setting the analog output, either component or VGA, RGB, HB, aspect ratio, underscan, overscan, selecting the input. This is the switching command essentially, SPIX, where X is a value of 1 through 5, composite, S-video, component, RGB, HB, VGA, or HDMI respectively. Input positioning, because sometimes you do end up with computers, for example, that may have, you may have seen this before, where they just end up slightly off center. We could adjust that for you, and of course we could adjust that for every input option there. Enabling, disabling, or toggle of the front buttons, and of course resetting to a factory default command, as well as gaining the status for the system. So we've seen this system design before. Let's just show you one more time here. This is the more common usage for the VP1250, as it is a piece of the puzzle of the matrix system, and we're completing that complete connectivity solution, full circle video system with the various products that Key Digital manufactures. This is the most common application for a VP1250 in this case, which is just every source that is outside of the majority rules format of the system gets its own VP1250. In this case, these two component video sources are converted to HDMI and scaled to the system's the resolution that you set in the 1250, again, not via the EDID there. I always forget to talk about this, but because the Hercules and Digital IQ series features that RCA output connections, this is a great way to take advantage here. Use those left and right RCA outs and feed into your 12-zone amplifier, as we can see here. And now you don't need an extra audio switching device or preamp, etc., because we got the volume control, multi-band EQ, even lip sync delay that can be added through the Hercules and Digital IQ series product. Excellent. Thank you very much for viewing Level 2 Part 2, Full Circle Digital Designs and Systems. We introduce you to HDMI matrix switchers with the control routing. That's the HDMS 4x4 Hercules series, HD 8x8 BT, Digital IQ series, and the Phantom series KD HDMSW 4x4. We talked about the products with the Cat 6 shielded. Those are the Hercules and Digital IQ. Why are they Cat 6 shielded requirements? Because it is a single Cat 6 cable only. And if you just have a single line, you get any electrical interference or grounding related issues, it's likely to affect the entire transmission, which is not a pretty picture. Pardon the pun. We discussed help and status commands. We took the whole nickel tour on those, didn't we? The pairings of the products. BBRX, BBTX with the Hercules, Cat HD 500RX with the Digital IQ. We discussed full buffer technology that is implemented into those top-of-the-line pieces. We discussed the dual cat matrix in the applications where you do not have perhaps the opportunity to run new wiring or maybe even the budget to run shielded Cat 6 cable, because it is a good step up from your typical Cat 5, Cat 5e price points. Key Digital presents you the Phantom series offering KD HD MSW 4x4 kit matrix, 4 receive bounds, 8 HDMI cables. We took you on the nickel tour, the help, the status, the light buffer technology we described to you. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to your customer? And my fellow AV aficionados, thank you very much for viewing Level 2 Part 2, where we took some time to really introduce you to Key Digital's fantastic line of HDMI matrix products. We hope that you have viewed this as a worthwhile investment of your time, and we look forward to you actually getting those parts in your hands, because as you can see, they can really pack a punch. They're very powerful, and there's nothing else quite like it in the industry, is there? We introduced you to those products with control routing that operate over a single Cat 6 cable. For example, the HDMS 4x4 matrix series of the Phantom, matrix switcher of the Hercules series, I should say, the HD 8x8 BT matrix switchers of the Digital IQ series. Okay. They are single Cat 6. They must be utilizing a shielded single Cat 6 because they are a single Cat product. You want to have a nice big bandwidth like a Cat 6 cable could provide. You want to have the robustness and defense against electrical interference, grounding issues, etc. that a shielded cable provides, because it is a single Cat transmission. If you get those interference or grounding issues, you're only going to ask for trouble. It's going to interrupt your transmission, and that's not a pretty picture. Pardon the pun. We went over the help command. We certainly did do the nickel tour, that's for sure. And again, some of those things that were within that help command, some of those advanced features, switching, EDA control, control routing, we are going to discuss in level 3, so stay tuned on that one. We discussed the bound pairing, BBTX and BBRX with the Hercules, Cat HD 500RX with the Digital IQ, and we discussed full buffering technology and what that means to you and your customer. Similarly, for a dual Cat product, the KD HD MSW 4x4 Phantom series, shielded Cat cable is not a requirement. It could be unshielded if you like. Cat 5, Cat 5e, Cat 6, you saw that it is a kit including the matrix, 4 receive bounds, 8 HDMI cables. There are some distance limitations. There is also a limitation as far as the light buffering technology that, again, you are now educated. You can make the decision of what product goes into which applications there and to be most successful. Okay, and then we scaled, switched, and formatted some various video types to HDMI using the KD VP1250, and we show you how that typically integrates into a matrix system. Up next will be Level 2, Part 3, Full Circle System Design, where we're going to take Level 2, Part 1, Level 2, Part 2 here that we're in right now, plus the gear that we've discussed in all of Level 1, and we're going to begin making some very good systems, full circle video systems, utilizing those parts. Thank you all very, very much for your time, and we'll see you next time on Key Digital Online Training.